Ladies and gentlemen, we are back again for another episode of the JMO show, the Just My Opinion show, hosted here on YouTube with me, Andrew Smith. Today, we are going to be talking about someone that you may have heard of, Connor McDavid with the Edmonton Oilers. I don't know if you know who that is, but today we're going to talk about him. He had a pretty big milestone that he hit the other night. So we're gonna take a look at that milestone for him. Actually, it's funny, the milestone, he already exceeded it in that same game. So we're gonna get into that and some statistics going into this regular season now that he's hit that, and looking at some doing some fun analysis on this milestone for him. You're going to be hearing the word milestone a lot this episode. Let's get into it. It's the JMO show here on YouTube with Andrew Smith. Let's go. Hello. I meant to do that earlier than I did, but I'm gonna put this down. A little behind the scenes. Every episode I have our little intro here up on Canva, and then I have to move the microphone over to be able to pick it up enough, I guess, because last week it wasn't as loud as I would have liked it to be, but we're getting things done here on the JMO show. As you can see above my head, Connor McDavid hit 700 points. Actually hit 701 with a hat trick the other night. I'm going to pull up really quickly just so that I have the exact stats from that game with me. So Oilers versus Canucks on Wednesday, October 12th. The Oilers scored 5 goals. McDavid had 3 of them, essentially nullifying all 3 goals that the Vancouver Canucks scored. I don't know why the app just disappeared on me. Give me one moment. For some reason the app doesn't want to work. Anyways, so today we're going to be looking at goals, assists, points, and points per game ranked all time and of active players. We're going to look at him with some in context with some people that are active that have played the same about the same amount of games as him, as well as going into points per game leaders in as well as the games played, and that's all time, I believe, or that might be active players. I can't remember. And then we are also going to be looking at anybody else that was in the top 150 active players to score, or sorry, to play in less than 500 games. So if you've played in less than 500 games and you are in at the very least the 150th spot, then you are going to be on this list. Now, I will do one caveat. I did all of this expecting to record this video yesterday, the 13th, before the games went down, but I'm not 100% certain if so. So I am not 100% certain if anybody on this list actually scored a goal. I do know for certain that Sidney Crosby did score a goal, so that'll change it a little bit, but not like a significant amount. I believe for him, especially for points per game, hit for that stat to go up or down, he would have to be scoring more than 1 goal per game in order to improve that stat for him. And then I was preparing a list for a JMO episode that I was going to do on the number 1 draft picks and how they did in their first year. Just double checking. Yeah, it was so going based off of their first year, and then as well as what their team did comparably between the season they dunked it inverse of what it means in the NBA. Dunked it completely the season that they were chosen to pick number one, and then the season after where they started that number one draft pick. That will be in a future episode because I want to give Yaroslav Halak, Yara Slavkovsky some time, and as well as Owen Power. I want to see how he does in his sophomore season. He only played 8 games in the NHL last year, but that's going to be for another episode. So I took that inspiration, and along with yours truly, Connor McDavid, above my head here, we're going to be looking at every cap era number one draft pick and their stance with points per game and points and games played and all that kind of stuff. So let's get one thing out of the way first. 488 games played for Connor McDavid, 242 goals, 459 assists for 701 points, a points per game average of 1.497, so in rounding up rules, 1.5 goals per game. He's going to be playing in his 489th game tonight. I believe it's tonight. But it's just, or tomorrow night, whatever. He's playing a game soon, and we'll take him at 149 or 489. Wow, I am all sorts of off today. It's really cold in our apartment. My ears and nose are freezing. That's why you always see me in a sweatshirt, is because we do not use our heat in this household. So all-time ranking, first, 346th all-time for goals, 204th for assists, 251st for points. In points per game, he's 4th all-time. Ranking in active players, goals 46th, assists 29th, points 27th for active players, and then he is first among active players for points per game. Right on his heels, though, we can go. Let's go to points per game first. Right on his heels for points per game, kind of, is Sidney Crosby, 1,108 games played with a points per game average of 1.272. You're going to be seeing a lot of me looking off to the side because there are a lot of stats here that that I have to be looking at. And like I said, the last episode, there might be an opportunity in the future for me to put something right here where my head is, so I can show everybody kind of what I'm looking at. Let's keep going down the list, though. I only put posted people on here that were above 1 point per game. Johnny Gaudreau being the 11th on the list with a 1.010, so just barely getting in there. Just remember that these are 1 day late, so these numbers, so some of them might be a little different than they are now. I don't know if this is a typo or not, but I have in here that Patrick Kane and Sidney Crosby have played the exact same number of games, 1108. So if we keep going down that list that I just told you about, Evgeny Malkin, Panarin, Draisaitl, Ovechkin, Kucherov, Kane, Stamkos, McKinnon, and Giroux fill out the top 11, the top 10 after Connor McDavid, all of them, as I said, above a point per game. Connor McDavid, obviously, the one in there with the least amount of games with 488. The most is Alex Ovechkin with 1,275, so 1,275 games. The closest to McDavid is Panarin. He's got a 1.12 points per game average, 509 games. Let's not kid around here. All of these people are absolute killers when it comes to scoring and assisting. On goals, like clearly, like these people are a cut above the rest. They're all scoring at a over 1 point per game trajectory. Obviously, you have somebody like Ovechkin who is going for the all-time goals and points, and he's just trying to get to that Gretzky number. They talked about it so much last night and 2 nights ago for the Capitals 2 games that they just had. I watched both of them, and that's all they could talk about the whole time was Ovechkin and the Gretzky climb, or the Gretzky chase, I should say. So, going over to players who have played right around the same number of games, I went with anybody that was at that 480 marker. So there's one person, Ben Sherratt, with 489 games, and then Sam Bennett, Andrew Kopp, and Radek Faksa, who are at 483 games, and then Johan Larsson, who is at 488 games as well. Points leader for those guys is McDavid with 701. Next on that list is Sam Bennett with 204. And then 202 for Kopp, 161 for Faksa, 132 for Larson, and then Ben Sherratt with one more game than McDavid with 118, but he's a defenseman, so I'm going to cut him a little bit of slack there. Not too much slack, but a little bit of slack. So, obviously, McDavid up here, everybody else that's played the exact same amount of games as him somewhere down here, like all of them are at below a 0.5, which the fact that McDavid is at a is at a 1.5, so he's the stark difference that you're gonna find in here is pretty crazy, especially if we go over to the games played. Like I said, games played below 500 and their rankings. So we have at 27th is McDavid with 488 games, 701 points. Next on that list is at 90th. Austin Matthews, 408 games played, 457 points. So, a little bit of a drop between McDavid and Matthews, and people have to remember that if we're looking at these rankings here, we've got Matthews at 90th, Marner at 92nd, Rantanen at 109th, Sebastian Aho at 115th, Matthew Tkachuk at 122nd, Jack Eichel at 124, Brandon Point at 131st, Jonathan Marchessault at 138th, Nikola Ehlers at 141st, and William Nylander at 150th. So I only went to 150 for under 500 games. I'm sure there's going to be stats everywhere when McDavid does get to that 500 game mark, because it's probably going to be most points for somebody, or second most points behind Gretzky or something like that, of most points at 500 games kind of thing. Like, he's got 12 more games to play until he hits 500. There's no reason why he shouldn't be at 715 points by then, because he's scoring at a much higher rate than games played. Scoring and getting assists for as well. So let's put it into perspective a little bit. 701 points at 488 games in 27th place for McDavid. Austin Matthews, the second one down, like I said, 90th place, 408 games, 457 points. Now you have to remember Austin Matthews has played one less season than Austin Matthews, but that's 80 games that McDavid has on Matthews, but I don't think Matthews would be able to make up the difference between 701 and 457 in 80 games. Like if McDavid went out for a complete season and Matthews was scoring at the pace he's at, he's still not going to get anywhere near that 701 rate. So that argument between McDavid and Matthews, you could even throw somebody like Eichel in there as well, like as like the generational talents. There's no comparison. The comparisons between McDavid and Gretzky are definitely founded. Like they're something that you can look at, but with everybody else, it's just a landslide. So, like I said, let's look at the first round picks. Going back to the 2005 draft when Sidney Crosby was drafted by the Pittsburgh Penguins. Points per game at this current point for Crosby, 1.272. And then the other people on this list that we've already talked about would be Matthews, McDavid, McKinnon, and Stamkos and Kane, all in that above 1 point per game average. We've got Eric Johnson when he was drafted. He was drafted by the Blues in the first round at a 0.383. Next on the list would be Tavares with just below a 0.95, 0.44. Taylor Hall, the next three are all Oilers picks, Taylor Hall, Nugent Hopkins, and Yakupov, with a 0.864, 0.733, and a 0.389. Then we go up to Aaron Ekblad, 0.525. Nico Hischier, 0.687. Dahlin with a 0.578. Jack Hughes with a 0.651. And Lafreniere with a 0.382. And then obviously Owen Power, very small games played, but 0.375. So he's looking okay right now. 8 games played, 3 points. We'll see how he does this season with the Buffalo Sabres, hoping for a more regular games played average for Owen Power this year. And then obviously Slavkovsky, who has a couple, at least one game under his belt, but no points as I can find as of yet. So that's all the stats that I have. The stats side of it. The analysis part of it is that you can talk about your Ovechkins, you can talk about your Sidney Crosbys, like your Patrick Kane's. You've got Stamkos in there, Tavares, obviously. Like these are all generational talents in my opinion. Like they're all guys that are gonna obviously most likely end up in the Hall of Fame. It's difficult for Tavares because he has not won a cup yet, but there's no reason why we can't assume that the Maple Leafs might end up with a cup at some point with Tavares in the lineup. Maybe not as captain, but definitely with him still in the lineup. He's got a couple more years left in him, I think. But if we're looking at the, especially for somebody like Ovechkin, like a killer when it comes to scoring, but not necessarily when it comes to assists as much as Sidney Crosby, because if I look at it, yeah, so I was right. So Sidney Crosby, over 300 more assists than he has goals. That just goes to show you how unselfish the guy is. When it comes to something like that, Patrick Kane also above on assists, then appoints Tavares above on assists. Most of the time, people are going to be above on assists than they are on goals, because assists come statistically more often. There are more people that are given an assist on a goal than the person that scores the goal. The only person that is above on goals is Austin Matthews, 259 goals, 198 assists. So obviously Matthews scoring 60 last year. He's going for, I believe, his fourth 40 goal season in a row. The last time that happened was Ovechkin. So, it's difficult to not compare McDavid to Gretzky, like all time points among people around his game played average, most the points per game among even all-stars like Crosby and Ovechkin and Kane and Stamkos and everybody else that I just mentioned. Like the people in that list that are above 1 point per game, you have to assume that there's some sort of pedigree there, whether it be a Stanley Cup ring, a Calder Trophy, any of the individual awards as well as the Stanley Cup or the President's Trophy or anything like that. That is going to get a player into the Hall of Fame, but everybody has to remember that Stanley Cups are not the only thing that get you into the Hall of Fame, and Connor McDavid has almost certainly, unless his career ends today, and even then, it's still pretty tough to deny that he could end up in the Hall of Fame just on what he's done so far. He's almost guaranteed to be a Hall of Famer in the future, and that's not something that is controversial to say. Now, like I said, he's 12 games away from 500. That means that he's 512 games away from 1,000. And if he is at a I'm going to do this number on the fly. If he is at a 1.497 points per game average, that's another 766.464. So about we'll just round down to 766. 766 plus 701 puts him at 1,467 points once he hits 1,000 games. So if he continues at the pace he's at, and he scored a hat trick in his first game of this season, so there's no reason why he might even boost it, go even harder than he is currently, and then obviously this is for regular season play, I believe, as far as I know. But yeah, 1,467 points at that point. One thing though that I would like to see, if I can pull it up really quickly, I don't want to sit here idly for too long, is see, because if I have my math right and we're at 1,467 by the time he's played 1,000 games, that would put him, Stan Mikita currently has 1,467, and he's retired, obviously. He was born in 1940. He played 1,396 games. So 300 games less for McDavid. He's scoring at that 1,467 goal pace. This is just ridiculous. So and everybody else, the only person that would have less games than McDavid and have a higher points would be Lemieux with 915 games, 1,723 points. So if you're going, I believe all-time points per game average, I believe Lemieux would be number one. Let's look. Gretzky is number one. Lemieux is number two. Gretzky was at a 1.921. And remember, this is all time. 1.883 for Lemieux. Mike Bossy with a 1.497, and then McDavid with a 1.436. So, I would say that is a Hall of Fame caliber already by the time he gets to that 1,000 game mark. One person that we can say 1,109 games for Sidney Crosby, his points is at 1,412, which would be about, what would that be? 55 less points than McDavid if he were to stay at that pace. Now, everybody, I've heard this said about Ovechkin, not as much about Crosby because he has been injured in the past, but with Ovechkin specifically, he's like, when has he ever been hurt since his first season? Like, he was drafted in 03-04, I believe, right? And let's see if I have that right. Oh, yeah. So 03-04 he was drafted, and has never had, to the best of my knowledge, a significant injury that took him out for an extended period of time. Ovechkin has 1,275 games played. Sorry, geez. I'm curious though. Sorry, I'm going to do a little bit of mental math. One, 2, 7, 5. Sorry about the dead air. So, I don't have that math right, so I'm not even gonna say it anyways. Whatever. So, again, I'm just gonna keep reiterating the fact that McDavid is already on a Hall of Fame path. He's got every single individual trophy that you can get. Obviously not a Stanley Cup yet, but a lot of people have the Oilers actually winning this year. I don't, but I do have them. I have them in the Final Four. I have Calgary in the Final Four. I go back and forth. For the official video, I think I put Calgary in that Final Four, but honestly, it's a toss up for me on those two teams. That Calgary and Edmonton, we're gonna find out as the year progresses, but everybody usually has them like right next to each other, obviously at the top of the division, all that kind of stuff. But so here's one thing that we have to remember when considering especially the number one pick that we were talking about. If you look at the people that we had discussed earlier, only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those players, 5 players that were drafted number 1 have won Stanley Cups since they were drafted number 1. And that is of quite a few players. Obviously, Slavkovsky's hasn't had the chance to win a Stanley Cup yet. I don't think the Canadiens are going to this year. And then everybody else, I'm looking at this list, and the Avalanche with McKinnon is the youngest number 1 pick to win a Stanley Cup at this current moment, with him getting chosen in 2013. And then you have the Panthers, Oilers, Maple Leafs, Devils, Sabres, Devils, Rangers, Sabres, and Canadiens. I have to think that Panthers, Oilers, and Leafs with Matthews, McDavid, and Ekblad, like any of those 3 teams has a pretty decent shot this year to win a Stanley Cup and give a Stanley Cup ring to either Matthews, McDavid, or Ekblad. Especially though, for me personally, Matthews and McDavid are really trying to make sure that their teams, at the very least, get into that 1 or 2 spot in their division. Hopefully, they're hoping for number one because it's not necessarily an easier road. Even the wild card spots are hard teams to beat. Calgary and Dallas being a perfect example of that. But as it stands right now, there's not much else I can say except for congratulations to Connor McDavid on a Hall of Fame career already, and cannot wait for him to score another bajillion points in his next 512 games. With that, I'm going to flash up the title card one last time and wish you all the best and hope to see you again soon. Look out for that. For any other JMO shows that could potentially be coming out in the present or near future, we've got a first game looking at each team's first game of the regular season, as well as I'm planning on the day after the 10th game for every team has been played. I'll be looking at the 10th game. And then that number one draft pick one. That hopefully maybe I'll wait until Slavkovsky scores his first goal. Hopefully it's this season that he gets his first goal or his first assist or something like that, where it's in the news a little bit more, so it's not just a random drop on something. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys again soon. Check out NHL Weekly tomorrow, and I will talk to you guys again shortly.